Okay, recording video on Thursday, the 5th of November 2020. It's just gone 7:09 a.m. Chicago time. Do hope you are doing well. So this video is going to be about Bitcoin and do the better indicators work on Bitcoin. But before getting on to that, let us just talk briefly about today. Today is the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November, which is Guy Fawkes Day. For those of you who don't know, Guy Fawkes, famous revolutionary in England who tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament. Poor fellow got caught, and he and all his co-conspirators were horribly tortured and then executed. As a warning to all of us plebs, don't try and take on the politicians. It won't end well for you. And then kind of just recently, we had the V for Vendetta movie come out some years ago. Brilliant kind of retelling of a modern day Guy Fawkes character who tries to take on the totalitarian politicians. And, the imagery from V for Vendetta, the Vendetta mask, ended up being, a symbol of Occupy Wall Street. I love how all the three stories kind of come together. It's an anti-establishment, anti-politician kind of message. And how appropriate, 2 days on from the American elections when we're in a real bloody mess, to be talking about Guy Fawkes and revolutionaries and political, shenanigans kind of going on. I am so sad for America. All you needed was a clean election and some clarity from the vote. There was such a huge lead up to it, just pulling the country apart. And you needed some coalescing kind of force and some way of just saying, yep, this is what we're going to go and do going forward. This is who's going to be the president, and kind of move cleanly on, whether it was with Trump or Biden. And you've ended up in the soup, the worst kind of all possible worlds where who knows if anybody will take the elections kind of seriously and believe the results as a result of what's gone on in the background. This is all by design, unfortunately. I have to say, it's like you have some of the strongest tech firms in the world in the US, and they could have designed an electronic, unhackable, unbreachable kind of voting system. Certainly in the last 4 years, in order to get some clarity with the elections. And no, they didn't do that. The politicians don't want that. It's not in their best interests to have an unhackable, clean voting system. Remember, Joseph Stalin famously said, it's not the people who cast their votes that matter. It's the people who count the votes that matter. And I think that's what's going on in some states at the moment. There's a lot of underhand stuff kind of going on in order to manipulate a national election. It's just a tragedy, absolute tragedy. No one will have confidence in the results, whichever way they kind of blow, and that's really sad. But it brings me on to Bitcoin, and I've always said, in videos on Emini-Watch that gold does really well when there is political uncertainty, and our modern version of gold, e-gold, is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is on an absolute tear today. Been strong, for the last 6 months, but we're about to breach, or very close to breaching, the 15,000 level, which is getting very close to previous highs that have been set. So I want to talk about Bitcoin and how to use the better indicators on your Bitcoin charts, because unfortunately it's not straightforward, it's not easy. So let's talk about that. First of all, this is my usual kind of chart setup with the better indicators on 2 different charts side by side. Everything to do with volume on the left hand side and everything to do with price on the right hand side. On the left hand side, we have better momentum below the price bars here. This is a volume based momentum indicator. And then on the price bars themselves, we have better Pro-Am, which uses the average trade size to identify professional and amateur activity. Professionals are painted in blue and amateurs are painted in yellow. On the right-hand side, we have better sine wave down here below the price bars, and this calculates the cyclical activity in 3 different time frames. And I use that cyclical calculation to determine support and resistance on the price bars themselves. Support lines are in red, resistance lines are in white, and we get the 3 different time frames on the price bars themselves. And then breaks of resistance to the upside is strength and uptrends, and breaks of support to the downside gives us weakness and downtrends, and strength is in red and weakness is in white. So that's what's going on with these two charts here. But let's talk about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a little bit of a mess when you come to charting it. You have 2 or 3 different options, and none of them is ideal and perfect. And I'm just going to show you what I do, and I end up looking at 3 sets of charts altogether. And all of this arises because we have 20 plus exchanges where Bitcoin is traded. So you don't have a single index for Bitcoin, and you don't have a single price for Bitcoin. All of those prices are being, are different, slightly different on different exchanges. And until we have, first of all, either some kind of very effective arbitraging happen, and I'm sure that's happening, but the sophisticated players are arbitraging between the different exchanges in order to reduce those differences in price between the exchanges, and or you have consolidation of those exchanges into a smaller number of exchanges. We're going to be stuck with this problem for a long time. So TradeStation has taken a couple of different routes in order to get to an answer. TradeStation and the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where the Bitcoin futures are traded. BTCUSD, which is listed under their Forex symbols, is one way of looking at the price of Bitcoin. The second one is a $ BRTI, which is the Bitcoin Real-Time Index, which is calculated by the CME. So the CME takes feeds from 5 or 6 different major exchanges of Bitcoin, and it puts all of those trades together in order to calculate a real-time index with both volume and price information. And then lastly, BTC, at BTC, which is the continuous contract, BTC is the futures contract on Globex. And unfortunately, the data is slightly different between these. The prices are, in form, are the same, and you'll see very similar support and resistance lines from Better Sine Wave. The big difference is BTC is a futures contract, so we're trading at $15,080 on the futures market, but right now the real-time index, what we're seeing on the exchanges themselves, is $14,900. So we're seeing almost a $200 difference between the futures contract and the actual trading that's happening at the moment. So that just shows that the futures contract's trading at a premium to real-time prices. But that's a difference that you'll see there. And then the other difference you'll see with BTC USD is that with this one we do have volume data, and what I do is I set the symbol to use, let me just move this over, BTC USD, using a 1440-minute chart allows me to look at the intraday volume there. 1440 minutes in a 24-hour session, that's why you use 1440 minutes instead of just selecting daily. You go for that. And then pull down menu, I use the trade volume going on here. I use natural bars. I don't think it makes any difference whether you're using exchange session hours or natural bars, but that's the setting that I use on BTC USD there. But on the real-time index, BRTI, on this one, what I have to do is we don't have real volume data here, so what we have to select is the tick count as a proxy for that. So again, the volume data is not being pulled in and aggregated for the different exchanges that the CME is using to aggregate the index data, just the number of trades is kind of coming in. So it's not ideal. Tick count is a proxy for volume, but it's not actual volume. So there we go. That's on the BTC chart, though. Here everything kind of looks as normal. A daily chart, I just pull down the daily chart, and it's got the volume that comes in through the Globex exchange on trading Bitcoin futures. So that being said, there's 3 different kind of ways of measuring the Bitcoin, what's happening in the Bitcoin market. They're all slightly different. The price bars roughly kind of line up and give you similar signals with Better Sine Wave, but the real difference is the professional and amateur activity and the momentum indicators do look different between these charts. And unfortunately, I don't have a preferred for these. There's not one that makes more sense than others. At some points in time, some of these signals made a lot of sense in one chart, but then didn't make sense in other charts. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that. So the first one is the sell-off that we had back in March, where Bitcoin crashed down to the 3,000, 4,000 kind of level down here. And you can see on the BTCUSD, which is kind of the Forex type listing in TradeStation, we had exhaustion, sell, and a whole bunch of blue professional bars came in on this V reversal, and that was beautiful, and that feels right. That's about right what happened during those couple of weeks of trading. That's what normally happens. Professionals pick it up on the way down and then buy it on the reversal and force this thing up, and we've kind of kept going with an exhaustion signal. So that felt kind of right there. But laterally, what we've seen, not really many helpful kind of professional bars or momentum signals kind of going on. This one made sense a few months ago, the BTC futures chart here, where we had a sell-off and exhaustion sell came in and blue professional bars. So on a smaller scale, that looks like a V reversal with professionals buying the lows and buying it, kind of accelerating away with an exhaustion pattern there. But on this sell-off back in March 2020, we didn't have blue professional bars, we didn't have an exhaustion signal, and so on. So it didn't make sense here, whereas this chart made sense. That didn't make sense, but this sell-off did make sense. So that's kind of interesting. And then the last one, just to note here on the real-time index, the last time we came up to 12,000 and tested into 13,000, you can see here we were being led by the amateurs with this chart. Rambo patterns kind of at the highs here with exhaustion buy. And again, that makes a lot of sense because I always talk about Rambo patterns and exhaustion together is unstable. That means a lot of amateurs are jumping into this market, and everybody was talking at that time about the 13,000, the break above 10,000, and would it get above 13,000? You can see that activity was led by the amateurs, so it means it's unstable. And then we had a crash back down, and a nice crash with blue professional bars coming at the lows at this point here, back in, is that September, and then buying a kind of reversal at this point. So we test those lows, amateur down bars as the test, and then blue professional bars come back in at 11,000, and we take off to the upside. So each of those kind of professional and momentum signals are slightly different on these charts, and there's no kind of ideal setup that works for me. So what I do is I track all three charts kind of side by side. And I do it with this kind of setup here. A little bit messy, kind of 6 charts all in one, but this is the volume indicators, better momentum and better pro-am on the charts above, with the BTCUSD, the Forex contract, the real-time index, and the futures over here, all the same indicators side by side here. And then everything to do with price with better sine wave below the price bars here. And again, same charts side by side, and you can kind of compare. So on a bigger chart, on a bigger screen, all of that kind of looks quite pretty, and I can see what's going on. And roughly, when you talk about the sine wave signals, they do line up between the 3 different charts here. So you can see at 10,000 we had this big resistance on the highest time frame, but we had strength. The bars were all red. None of the support levels are being broken at this point. We're just breaking resistance each time by a little bit by a little bit. And so that's showing background strength with price going up, and we broke above resistance to get out of this 10,005 kind of level into this uptrend. Similar pattern on the index BRTI. Here there's that resistance on the highest time frame. All of the bars you can see are red, which is good, showing that we're breaking resistances and not supports. The supports are all holding, so that's good, and the market's moving up. And then this is the futures contract. That resistance has come in higher at a 13,000 level instead of this 10.5 level kind of down here. So it's come in there. We had a little bit of weakness a couple of months ago here, but then red bars kind of going on breaking resistances, and supports are all holding at this point. So slightly different on the futures contract, but these two charts were lining up really quite nicely, the Forex symbol and the real-time index. Where's it going? Well, we're up at close to 15,000 as I'm speaking, and it's all being driven by political uncertainty, money printing to some extent kind of going on, and we've been waiting for this for a while. The 10,000 level, the 13,000 kind of resistances have all been important resistances, and we're finally through them. So now, as a little bit of a rush, a race to kind of jump on board, a lot of professional money kind of coming in. There's not been an ETF kind of launched on Bitcoin yet. There's been several that have tried and all failed, but at some point that'll be another reason why I think the hedge funds are starting to pile in. I think the amateur investor is kind of in to Bitcoin, but as a percentage of assets under management, it's still tiny Bitcoin. So at some point that'll flip. It'll become a more recognized asset, and slowly you see those news stories kind of coming out that it'll be a kind of a professionally traded, a professionally held asset. I'm not worried about it being cancelled. I think there's been too many kind of good signals, if you like, from the establishment to say that there are now professional custody holders who are all kind of big name Wall Street firms. That's all been allowed. That was kind of a vote of confidence in Bitcoin to say that the financial regulators are not going to step in and all of a sudden make it illegal, do whatever to it. How they could do that, I have no idea. But all the signals have been on the positive side in terms of Bitcoin, and we just need more professional money managers to look at it as an asset to hold, particularly with what's going on with political uncertainty and money printing. So this has got some way to go. However, having said that, at some point we will have a little bit, this move will end up with a little bit of trouble. And the trouble I see comes from this. So intermediate time frame, we've got support going on here, and we've broken through resistance on the lowest time frame there. That's got to go pull back to end of trend on this lower time frame. But when we get this cyclical cross here, we've already got it on better sign wave. We're waiting for that. Where timing is due for that cyclical resistance on the intermediate time frame, and sometimes that's a place where things could end for a while because it's not a trending move. We're breaking above resistance on the lowest time frame, but the intermediate time frame will come on as resistance there, and I think that's the same on all of these charts. Whoops, let me just go to this one. All these charts saying the same thing. There's that intermediate resistance down here at 10. We've got that cross, so we've got that resistance on the intermediate time frame to come. And let's see the futures contract, exactly the same. Here we go. Support on the intermediate time frame. We will have resistance on the intermediate time frame kind of coming at some point, but no exhaustion signals, no blue professional bars on these left hand side charts, the volume based charts. So we'll just have to hold on and wait and see where this goes until we get exhaustion buys and blue professional up bars, reverse signals of what we saw down here at the lows. That's when we'll start to see some profit taking. But for the time being, we're trying to cruise through 15,000, and all of a sudden, good news for Bitcoin hodlers. And, we'll see the professionals will have to start buying Bitcoin in bulk in order to protect against political uncertainty and money printing. Anyway, so there we go. I hope that was of interest to you.